Like to bring the Board of Selectmen meeting for April 8th, 2021 to order at 6:30 PM. Chuck couldn't be with us this evening. First item on the agenda is to take action on the meeting minutes for March 18th, 2021. And I had a few corrections. And I gave you a copy of it in that packet. They're minor, just minor corrections, and minor in red.
You're the ones that are crossed out?
No, the cross-out's not mine.
Okay.
I think that's Teresa's. That's Teresa's. Instead of changing the word change, instead of eliminated, eliminate. I mean, they're minor.
Okay.
And at the very end, may be able to finalize, let me see, it's regarding the short-term rental bylaw. And Chuck and I felt that this may be able to be finalized by a June annual town meeting, which is the actual intent of what was said. Okay, they're minor. So anyway.
One thing that drives me crazy, if we're gonna talk about minutes, is I is spelled AYE, not I.
Oh, is it? All right. I'll point that out.
As far as my English minor, I guess, I don't know.
All right, so I move that we accept the select board meeting minutes for March 18th, 2021.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next item on the agenda, the wildlife feeding ordinance, also known as the bear bylaw. So we basically have this put together. There hasn't been any changes. And we'll get this posted on the website. Daryl Fennelly, Chief Fennelly had recommended the fines for second violation, $50, subsequent violations, $100. And we just added verbiage since the last discussion, fines to be set at the discretion of the Board of
Can
Selectmen.
we put this on the screen, Michael?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, the purpose of this, the intent of this ordinance by Chief Fennelly is to protect the health and welfare of both people and wildlife by prohibiting the feeding or attracting of wildlife. Because we apparently do have a problem and we do have some people feeding the bears. And I think it was 2 days ago, I heard that while they were closing up the Elm Street Market, he walked out to go to his car and the bear was on the sidewalk right there. So the bears are a little too comfortable in town. So we kind of think this will be a useful. So do we want to go through this whole thing again?
I have a couple of comments because I wasn't as familiar with it when it came up the first time.
Okay,
Which section would you like me to go to?
I want to go to section B. First of all, actually, the background, I don't think generally in our bylaws, we need to explain. It almost comes across as marketing, justification. The bylaws are sort of, personally, I think they don't need sort of the, the preamble, if you will, but that's up to you.
well, the preamble is not part of the bylaw. Okay, Daryl wrote this, and he's basically giving the background and the purpose. That is part of what will be incorporated when this is written up as a warrant article. Typically, a warrant article has, the intent of it. And so that's to be used. But the part that's actually would be the bylaws is starting with wildlife feeding ordinance.
All right.
Everything above it is,
So that's
Just his
not my-
comments.
That's not my major concern. Here's my thought. All right. Downtown borders about, 1,000, 1,500 acres of preserve between Laurel Hill, the Statewood Beartown, and our 70 acres at Ice Glen. That entire ridge is full of bears, and we're not hunting bears anymore the way that we used to.
right,
And so there's going to be more bears. Everyone has to wrap their head around the idea that there's going to be more bears. The idea that we're suggesting that people can't have a bird feeder, is that what this says? That's how I read it. It says in B that you can't put anything that, where is it?
no attractants, I think.
No attractant.
Thinking
Yeah.
of-
It
Right.
basically, I didn't see any carve out for bird feeders. Okay, so that's the first thing is, do we really want to be lecturing the half the town that enjoys bird feeders in the winter when bears are asleep, by the way? You know, look at several times, you know, in my time here, I've said, you know, that garbage smells a little bit and I can't bring it in till tomorrow at 8 AM. So I'm gonna put it outside and cross my fingers. And like 3 times the bears came and got it. And you know what? I had to go clean up my yard from stinky garbage. And you learn a lesson, whether it's them attacking your bird feeder or attacking your garbage, that for residents, I don't believe we need to, there's a built-in incentives for residents to deal with these things the correct way, because, you know, if you don't, you deal with the nuisance
Right,
of
but
the
he's,
bears.
I don't see any mention in here of bird feeders specifically.
I'm saying, why are we regulating residents? Why isn't this a narrowly targeted bylaw, targeted businesses to make sure they lock up their dumpsters, which is what the problem that we had
That we don't need to address because that's part of Mass General Law health regulations. They are required to do that under Mass General Law. I mean, which has happened before where we had an incident where, you know, business dumpsters were being broken into. They were not secure enough. They were cited. They had to comply.
I thought
They
there
had to
were
make
certain
them.
regulations we're adding here that we didn't have to wait for it to get to the Board of Health or something. I thought that the Board of Health was limited in enforcement in that experience that we had, you know, on Main Street or on Elm Street.
Not really.
No, I don't believe so.
Wasn't
Then why, so we're doing this because we don't, why are we doing this? That's my question.
because we have people that are actually feeding the bears and attracting the bears. We're not talking about bird feeders here. There's no mention of bird feeders. It's talking about.
So it's all wildlife. You can't feed any wildlife. I read the thing. It says feeding of wildlife prohibited. That's like,
Where does it say?
it's
this?
number B, section B, you know, it's the line before the one that's up.
Intentionally or knowingly feed, use, place, provide, give, expose, deposit, scatter, distribute, lever or store any attractant that provides a lure, attraction or enticement to wildlife on any property. in the
Wildlife,
town.
not bears.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, we're banning bird feeders here all year round, and it's kind of insane to me.
I don't know. I mean, if you have a problem with it, Daryl wrote this, so I would.
I'm not, you know, look at, I think the bylaws are important that we get them right. And the other thing is I would suggest that somebody get this to John Drake. I called him about 6 o'clock. He hadn't seen it yet. I would like to have our animal control officer weigh in on, you know.
Because I remember asking Daryl about, well, what about salt licks?
Yeah.
And he said, I think he said that they were illegal in Massachusetts. I'm not sure. I
Right.
know that they do, people do it in New York State. I don't know if it's illegal or not, but I know
Or
that.
any kind of baiting.
Right. But our problem is specific to particularly the downtown area.
Yeah, I understand. I think that setting an expectation, we have so much acreage abutting downtown with that is bear habitat, and we have more bears because they're not shooting them anymore.
Well, the bottom line is, regardless, I mean, we can obviously discuss this with Daryl and we can go over this. However, it's a proposed bylaw. The voters decide whether or not they want to adopt the bylaw.
Yeah, that's the process. I think we're making a mistake when we create an either or option for voters between, because there is a problem that maybe we need to address. Though if you're telling me we don't need it for commercial establishments, I'm not sure what it is, other than some people I know do feed bears, and that's bad. But I think getting to the point where it's a yes or no, if it doesn't really meet what the need is, you know, I don't know if I'm saying it right. All I'm saying is that the way I read this is it bans bird feeding. And I
Questioning whether the select board needs to put this forward,
Right,
what?
whether the select board needs to put this forward or not.
right.
Yeah, I like C, garbage, trash, waste containers. That makes total sense.
Right.
Let's just do C. D is good too. You know,
Okay,
we
well,
need the definitions, A, C, and D. Let's get rid of B.
okay. Well, I would prefer to do this if you have an objection to this, to discuss this when Chuck can also be here.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. I think we should continue because I want
So
John
I
here
think
too.
we should just continue this one particular item. and look at it again the next meeting.
Okay, good.
And go over it in a little more detail prior, so that if you've got a suggestion, if we can be specific about exactly what we want to strike or change. Maybe it's a matter of changing the.
I mean, I actually do. My proposal is we get rid of B. It's that simple. A, C, and D are what I think we need to focus on is dumpsters. Dumpsters, trash. Did you
That's
see the picture I sent you guys on the trash outside that place on Hawthorne Street, that short-term rental? Where he, it was, yeah, they were just putting the bags out, the bears got to it, the whole street is a mess, that's exactly what we do.
It's
need
already
to
been
do.
addressed by Tri-Town Health.
What?
It's already been addressed by Tri-Town Health.
Okay,
They were cited.
okay,
But at any rate, the problem is that I know in talking to Daryl that his intention was, what he feels the problem is that we literally have people feeding the bears.
And they've had in
Center of
residential.
town, close to the center.
Why don't I invite both Daryl and get a copy also to the animal control officer and invite both of them to our next meeting, which is in the morning.
Right.
and if that's what we want to deal with, I personally think bylaws should be written as narrowly as possible to deal with the problem we have. Let's not say wildlife, let's say it's illegal to feed the bears. I
I'm
mean,
saying, maybe we just change the wording, we tweak the wording.
yeah, no, that's what I'm
so that we
saying.
can
Yeah.
still accommodate what Chief Fennelly's concerns are. So
Uh,
that's one of the big concerns. I mean, and this also obviously addresses dumpsters, et cetera,
Right,
but let's continue this until our next meeting, which is
okay, sounds
what's the
good.
date?
15th. Yeah, at 9.
The 15th
Yeah, at 9 a.m.
at 9 a.m. Okay, moving on.
Oh, wait, but before we move on though, you're comfortable with the idea that, that people are gonna be, there's gonna be paperwork associated with this bylaw because someone makes a complaint,
Right, we're gonna have,
investigating authority, all that stuff that could be significant,
Investigating authority is the police department.
What?
I believe investigating authority is the police department. And
I
this,
know it's more than that, it's defined. I think it was defined as like, some state people and,
enforcement authority shall be the Stockbridge Police
department,
Department
F.
under F.
Okay.
Okay,
All
I'm
right,
going to continue that discussion on the 15th. So the next order of business is the accountant position. And Mike, do you want to address that?
yeah, I regret to inform the board that Ray Ellsworth has decided to retire effective May 1st. So planning on getting the advertisement out and beginning a search. Ray's been excellent in the 6 months that I've been here, plus now. He's outstanding. He has said that it's time for him to step down and enjoy retirement. I have spoken to him. He's willing to stay on longer with the essential duties until we get somebody in. But I'd like to get working on the process. So the plan right now is to get an advertisement out that we're looking to fill the position of accountant. That we form a search committee similar to the treasurer. And then we bring a recommendation.
And have you reached out to the people on the search committee yet?
I've reached out to 2 of the 3 that I'm gonna ask and one more who's not here yet, but or not on, but I will ask the one other. I'd like to use the same search committee as last time. So the only one thing
I'm just gonna thank Jay, that's why I asked the question.
Jay, Georgia, and Bromley, gonna ask all 3 of them to join and then ask Erica Olson, also our treasurer, tax collector, as they have to work very closely. And then we'll bring a recommendation like we did last time for at least move 2 candidates forward for the select board to interview and then hire.
Right, although I've got to point out, it is the select board who appoints committees.
Yeah.
So that would be something for the 3 of us to do the appointments.
All right, so I would like to, the only one I haven't had a chance yet to speak to, and I need to try to reach him tomorrow, but if he'll accept, I'd like to have Jay Bukowski, Georgia Marsden, and Bronley Boyd, along with myself and Eric Olson.
We vote on that now so they can start their work. The guy, Ray's leaving May 1st.
I mean, we can do it at the next meeting.
I would think we should.
Because
Next meeting.
I have to get the advertisement out, so we won't be interviewing for another two, we're gonna give 2 weeks of, at least 2 weeks of advertisement.
Right.
So we're gonna plan on getting stuff out, starting tomorrow and getting this noticed, so.
It's on the agenda. Can't we just consider that part?
Let me confirm with everybody that's drawn. It really doesn't matter, Patrick, because like I said, we won't take any action until we actually have applicants. And since we're just gonna start putting everything out effective tomorrow, we'll be getting the applicants in and then beginning this.
I have a couple of other suggestions for those positions.
What's that?
I have a couple of other suggestions for those positions.
Yep.
People that were on the group that actually gave us recommended Ray.
Ah,
Those are David McCarthy, I believe, and Christine Rasmussen. Both of those people were on that search committee that actually found us Ray. So
well, I can reach out to both of them, see if who's interested and then come back to you. I would like to personally keep it to 5 people. I don't think it needs to be larger than that.
Michael, are we going to use any more modern techniques in addition to the legally mandated advertising like Indeed? I mean, I think all jobs should be listed on these giant platforms. There's 2 of them, Indeed and one other one. That, it's not that expensive. It's like a couple $100 and it opens the door to like, thousands and thousands of candidates who just search for jobs.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to, we could place it on.
I think
the other
that's
thing
good.
is that, there's also headhunters, and there are headhunters who specialize in municipal employment.
Right. So I was gonna reach out.
Multiple options.
Typically, there's the Beacon, which is people that are looking for professional municipal positions within Massachusetts. It's done by the Mass Municipal Association. Berkshire Jobs, place it on our website. Berkshire Eagle.
I saw Great Barrington just nabbed the North Adams assessor. Can we just get their accountant? South County can take all the employees from North Adams.
Yeah, they did. Lee Housing Authority took the city clerk and community development person too. So, yeah.
All right.
But yeah, so do you want me to place it on Indeed and
Yeah, and then whatever that other one is, I forget the name, but there's one that's even bigger than Indeed now.
is that Monster? Or?
No.
No, that's kind of passe now.
I was gonna say, I thought that was. Yeah, just send
For a job in a while.
All right, just send it to me. We can place it on all those. And unless there's a huge cost to them, we have money for
Right.
things like this. Yeah.
I just think with such a short window, we should try to get the word out as broadly as we can.
Yes. And of course, anybody that's interested, it'll be posted on our website and anybody in town.
Steve, I hear you're good with numbers. You want the town accountant job?
I'm okay.
So anyway, we're all pretty, we're fairly bereft about losing Ray, but, I trust that with a good committee, we'll find a decent replacement, but I think his shoes are gonna be hard to fill.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is the residential exemption you wanted to talk about, Patrick?
Look, we start with the minuses or the pluses. There's a sense, let's start with the minuses. Some folks in town believe appropriately, so it's a progressive taxation and it can be, it is a way to shift tax burden from a class of people to a different class of people. I've heard the term soak the rich, for example. It is more complicated for town hall to deal with. It is not as elegant as something that maybe was based on wealth or resources, but the state doesn't allow us to do that. the state only allows us a few different types of exemptions, and this is one of them. I think that Stockbridge is in a transition. And then if you look 20 years down the road, this will continue to have evolved into being a very different town than it was 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. My dad bought in 1960, he bought a house for $10,000 because it was the bedroom community for GE. All over this town, there were GE employees who owned houses. And now it's a different town, or 60, 70% of the town now is second homeowners. Values, I looked up today the, median house price for the United States from 1960 to 2020. And it went from basically 17,000 to 300,000. And yet my dad's valuation went from about 10,000 to, I imagine my house is worth now $500,000, maybe more, I don't know. And the point I'm making is that the folks who are going to spend their elderly years here, as we go through this transition, are some of the most vulnerable people in our community. We have, when we were talking about the Housing Repair Trust Fund, the number was posited that we have 150 seniors who would qualify because their income and their resources are modest enough. And I understand the concerns around it being administratively difficult and around the question of fairness. But I am a lot more concerned about the people who can't necessarily afford to keep up with how, when the neighborhood's prices go up, the assessments for everybody go up. And I have two people who live on my street. One didn't re-register her car for 2 months because she couldn't afford it. 85-year-old woman. Another basically has fuse boxes in her basement because she can't afford to upgrade her electrical system. 87-year-old woman living alone. And I just think that those are stories that people in this town don't complain. But just because they don't complain doesn't mean that for people of modest means, the taxes aren't too high. And if I have to, come down on being fair to people of, greater means, or making sure we're taking care of the folks that as we transition to the next 20 years are going to be the most vulnerable, I want to take care of them. And that's why I support it, but I understand the arguments against it. And I respect some of the people on this call who think it's a bad idea,
Can I make a statement, Patrick?
Well, let's hear from Roxanne first.
I really am not in a position right now. I mean, I'm one of those people. I'm 71 years old. So I'm one of those people that I have to worry about right now, particularly during COVID, being able to maintain my home, which I can't really do right now. And so it's of concern to me. I really think it's the devil is in the details. So there are a lot of decisions to be made about that if we were to pursue it. One of them being the percentage. It's a broad array of percentages that we could
1 to
we can
35.
choose from. That's right. Go
Right.
up to
And we
35.
could also phase it in over 5 years if we wanted to.
That's right. So there's a lot there to be discussed. I would want to hear a lot more from the public in terms of what their opinions are.
Well, that's why I
because
want to either put it on the warrant or have just some kind of forum,
it could
like
be
what we did with
Yeah.
Randall, where people could talk it through.
I think
'Cause-
we already talked about this in a previous meeting and saying, yes, we could just have a non-binding vote on.
Yeah.
at
As long as
town,
we've had a chance to talk through the
an
pluses
idea
and
of where
minuses.
people, how they feel about this. So that we can really get their opinions about it. I'm hoping that you told the 85-year-old neighbor, though, about the Berkshire Regional Planning, the block grant. that
I did,
she could-
but then we thought that it was closed and now we found that it's reopened. I do need to tell her that.
It's not close.
But another thing,
Put more money in it.
And before Jay, before you weigh in, just know that I'm okay with it being a binding referendum. This is never something I would advocate for if the town didn't support. So if I can't make the case that the voters think this is a good idea, I don't think we should do it. And I mean, changing tax policy with just the three of us making that decision, I think is a terrible idea. But I don't think that it's unreasonable to raise the question about how elderly and modest means are going to afford their taxes, because I think that's a real issue.
Can I make a statement, Patrick?
Let's go
I-
ahead, Jay.
I think Roxanne clearly articulated that the devil is in the details. And there are a lot of issues here. For example, and not to belabor the situation, there are virtually no communities in Berkshire County, to my knowledge. Great Barrington just recently voted at the last meeting the concept down. And some of the larger communities in the state, like Arlington, Belmont, Boston, Brookline, Waltham, Somerville, Medford, and Cambridge, I think these are some of the large communities that have residential exemptions. I think really we need to get the details as to what's involved, what are all of the options for seniors. There is a senior tax deferral program also that's out there. And I think the conversation with the public, not only the residents, but also the second homeowners at the second homeowner meeting might be well taken in this situation. There's a lot of details that have to be explored before we get into this. The most significant one is what kind of a burden is it on our assessor's office?
We've been told, Jay, that they will have a, if we decide to do it, that they'll be ready to do it. That, Michael, you can confirm that. Look at two types of
To
communities.
carry it out if needed.
You're right, only about 5 or 6% of the communities in Massachusetts took advantage of this. There's two types who did. One is really liberal communities because it is progressive taxation. And the other is Cape Cod communities because there is, just like Stockbridge, this giant differential between some of the houses that were being built and what it was doing to assessments with the algorithm, to neighboring and adjoining properties. Yep.
Steve?
I ask a question? It's very difficult to be against.
Can you talk a little louder, Steve?
I'm sorry, it's very difficult to be perceived in any way to be against the concerns that Patrick and Roxanne raised because, we've all had at one time or another senior relatives who've had, difficulty with making ends meet. But I think that we need to be very careful about instituting a program like this without having at least looked at some empirical data from the 14 communities. Remember, this is 14 communities out of 351 communities and cities and towns in Massachusetts that have adopted this program. And so far, I don't think that we've seen any empirical data as to what kind of benefit this has been to the population, which was designed, at least according to the legislative intent back in 1979, to provide assistance to. We do have, as Jay has pointed out, we do have under Chapter 59 a tax deferral program that could be instituted. That would help. We also have an abatement program here that we bought into many, many years ago. It would be interesting to see how many people have availed themselves of the abatement.
Well, not many. And I think that part of the reason is I don't think folks, a lot of folks are proud old Yankees and they don't want to come in to their neighbors and give them like their financials showing that they're poor.
But they may not want to come in and participate in this program either, Patrick.
This program doesn't require them to give us any of their data.
Well,
I don't know why folks don't come in and take advantage of the senior abatement. I don't know, but I suspect it's because they don't want to come to town hall and be embarrassed that they're broke.
Let me just continue, okay, if you will. And that is part of the problem. And actually, you raised the issue as to whether or not this really does address the issue of reduced incomes. Because if it's based solely upon assessed valuation, I know people who live in $500,000 houses who have 10
We'll still
times.
get a huge break though if we do the whole one.
who
I
have,
mean,
who have
look at
a lot
break-even
more money than I
Stockbridge
do.
is about 1.6 million.
Yeah. So I think that in order to do this, we need to look at the totality of the tools that are available to us, the number of people who will be benefited by it, and what impact there will be on a non-voting resident population that already is providing somewhere between 60 and 70%
Yeah.
of our residential levy.
I think, as I said at the beginning, Steve, I think you could make a fairness argument that this isn't fair. But I also think if we're going to protect a class of people, I want to protect the folks who are the poorest, not the folks who are not the poorest.
You know, Patrick, I'll tell you, I was part of the effort in 1979. I worked, in housing policy, and I remember this act going through, and no one could demonstrate. The legislature thought it was great. It sounded wonderful, but no one had any data whatsoever to prove its effectiveness. And to this day, you cannot get this kind of information from the Division of Local Services at the Department of Revenue. They've had some experience in the 14 communities that have this program. And I just think a lot more needs to be asked before this goes. First of all, you guys have the power to do this. You don't need a town meeting vote to do it, but there should be public discussion about it before you make this decision, and there should be some factual basis. The underpinnings, I mean, the reason to do it is something that very few of us can disagree with. Okay,
Right.
I'm with you, Patrick. But
Yeah, no, and I completely agree, Steve. I think we absolutely need to do that analysis.
okay,
Patrick.
that's all I'm going to say. Thank you very much.
I think, Jim, you had your hand up?
And Kate Fletcher does too.
I've had my
Okay.
hand up for
Yep,
quite
she-
some time, actually. Can I speak?
All right, Kate, go ahead.
Yep, thank you. I did have my hand up for quite some time.
I couldn't see it.
Patrick, thank you for bringing this up. And thank you also for thinking about some of our neighbors. We know we know what the situations are here. I think it's definitely worth looking into, and perhaps there is someone at the Department of Revenue or Division of Local Services that could do a presentation, and provide more information. I certainly would be interested in attending a Zoom presentation on this topic.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Jim?
You're muted,
You're
Jim.
muted, Jim.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
My only comment is that I echo somewhat what both Jay and Steve said. I think there are several programs that have potential here. There isn't anybody that disagrees with the intention of this, but the implementation of it might be an entirely different situation. And I just think that I wouldn't rush into this, and I agree with Kate, maybe a presentation on that aspect, but also, as Steve mentioned, the DLS has a taxpayer's guide to local property tax deferrals. There's a way.
We're talking about that for next year too. We
Well,
already had that discussion.
Well,
Who's
the
had that
point
discussion?
is, you guys.
We
have
haven't
talked
as a
about-
board.
No, I'm
I
saying-
had that discussion as a board.
well, he said. he would-
The only point I'm making is you guys are talking, Patrick, but you've already mentioned you'd like public input. And if you want public input, have a hearing that covers these items. So people can give you the pros.
Jim, the context of what putting this on the warrant is really around in the time of COVID. We had a concern, and I share this concern that it's harder for people to be engaged in big decisions. It wasn't whether or not we're ready to make the decision. It was whether or not we even have enough participation. We've been talking about some pretty big issues in this town at a number of our boards, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of people show up on Zoom to participate in these discussions. And so the question of whether to put it on the warrant in May is more about making sure that we have engagement, which I think will be better after COVID, frankly.
Well, Patrick, I would respond to that comment regarding Zoom, that I think you're forgetting that many town residents maybe can't participate at the time of your meetings at 6:30, but they watch the meetings on CTSB. Because CTSB rotates, they show those meetings quite frequently.
But you can watch the meetings after the fact?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately,
That's why
Jim,
we're tied.
I'm not sure we hear from a lot of those people. You know, we do get obviously some comments and some emails, but there is not a flood of them coming in based on specifics that were discussed in various meetings. Which is too bad. I wish more people would attend
Yeah.
or would respond after the fact when they do see the meeting.
But I like what Jay and Steve said, though. I really think, you know, like, look, we got 3 programs that we can play with. We've got the senior deferral, which has got pluses and minuses. We've got residential exemption, which clearly has pluses and minuses, and we have the existing senior abatement. And I think that looking at more nuanced evaluation of the 3 options and doing an educational effort to make sure people are informed before we ask them to make the decision. I think that's a great idea.
Thank
Kate
you.
raised her hand again.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just want to, yeah, thanks, Roxanne. I just want to support the comment, I think it was Patrick, that there's a lot of pride in this town, and everyone also knows that nothing in Stockbridge is confidential. So I would be willing to bet that there are very few people who are eager to go down to the town hall and file any kind of request paperwork. I don't know exactly how it works and what's involved, but yeah, I think that comment resonates with me. Thank you.
Well, I would like to make a comment about that. And basically, I think the number was 8 people this year. And I
Yeah.
can't remember the dollar amount that was distributed. However, I can tell you that not everybody knows everything. There is confidentiality. We have no idea who those 8 people are. And we're selected and we're here often. But we do not know. So there
Same
is
thing with the,
confidentiality.
By the way, speaking of which, you know, that loan is still open, you know, the housing repair grant from the state. We were incorrect last week when we said it was closed. That you can still apply for that. So anybody who needs a new roof and is, you know, of modest means, you can still apply for that and call us and we can help you do it.
I
Yeah, the
need a new
clock-
bird feeder, Patrick. The bear took mine.
Oh, no. Okay, any more comments? Okay, hearing none. The next item on the agenda is streetlights, discussion and next steps. So Michael, did you want to lead that off?
Yeah, and I know Laura's also on the call.
Oh, Laura's here.
Um,
Hey,
Hi, Laura.
hi.
How's the dog?
Laura's done a tremendous amount of work along with her committee to get us to the point where we're at now, which is we've been looking at all the options around street lighting of going to LEDs, owning the lights ourselves, and what would be the best fit for the town. We've been looking at everything from consultants that are available through the state programs, and we've done a lot of work, and I have to say the committee has been very impressive with all the work that they've done as far up to date. But at this point now, the committee needs to bring this forward to the select board because the committee's would like to move ahead with bringing in a consultant to do the lighting inventory to figure out the next stages in the plan.
Can you say
That
that
would
I can explain what this is that we're talking about
Yeah.
in a sentence or two, if you can?
So this started off over the last couple of years that National Grid has offered upgrades to LED, to move your lights to LED, which would save us somewhere in the neighborhood of 30%. But at the same time, so right now we spend about 40,000, so that's about $12,000 a year. But as we began looking into it, we found that a number of communities around us, and some are going through it right now, like Williamstown, and others like Pittsfield have already gone through it, and a lot of communities are buying the streetlights themselves and then taking over the streetlights by the community, which can save you up to 70% annually of your streetlight cost. So that's about $28,000 a year for the town of Stockbridge. Then what you can do is you can contract with an electrician to fix the lights. Now, after you first put in the lights, a typical LED failure is somewhere around 2% annually, and we have 200 and something lights, so you're looking at about 4 failures a year. That's a slightly larger number that we found out in the first year. When they first install, it can be slightly higher, but it tends to be under warranty at that point. But it would be switching over to the town owning its lights. Now, when we talk about owning lights, we're talking about owning the arm and the Cobra head, not the telephone poles, not the electrical part. But there could be some issues that we found around issues of wiring, and some of the older street lights might need to have some replacement wiring and some other things in it. But this would allow the town to secure the lights ourselves, maximum value, decrease our footprint, our carbon footprint, improve the lighting situations, do a lighting inventory. But in order to go to that next step, A, we need to petition National Grid for what it would cost us to buy it, the lights from them. And then B, we would need to get a consultant in and hold interviews with the consultants. And that can either be by the select board with the committee, the select board itself, or you guys could have the committee do the initial search for you.
Talk about potentially saving $13,000 to $28,000 a year.
Yeah.
However, one of the things that came up at the assessors meeting was that all of these assets, are being appraised higher, and if National Grid is selling us the asset, what is the tax hit we take by not having them own it and pay us taxes for it?
That's not, most of what we get from them are actually remember, they're still gonna own the poles, they're still gonna own the wires.
Doesn't include
Only, you're right, it's only the light and the Cobra head and the arm. So it doesn't decrease much their overall inventory as far as that. You're talking very small numbers as far as that.
Right.
So Laura, is there anything that I missed from our last meeting?
No, I think you covered it well. I was just going to say, we need to do, if we do nothing, then not half of our lights are incandescent. You can't even replace an incandescent with an incandescent. So National Grid would automatically replace it with an LED, and we might get a lower bill, but we wouldn't get any incentive when we would get what they would install. This way, after a year of struggling with this, we realized that we would get the possibility of getting more attractive at the residential level, more visually attractive lights that are better and bright night skies friendly, and will save much more money. And that small towns like Stockbridge have the ability to maintain them and contract that out. So it's just, we've gotten so much more comfortable as we've explored it to say that we should do this, because it's going to happen eventually anyway, and we wouldn't get any of the savings. Or we'd get some, we would get some, but we would get half as much.
So the next step is doing our lighting inventory, and that would be bringing on a consultant. So the select board's the only board that can contract with a consultant. So one of the things could be a recommendation from the streetlight committee. It could be a joint meetings with the select board with interviewing consultants, or it could be the select board itself interviewing the consultants and making a decision. Ultimately, the select board's in control of this piece as far as how you would like to handle it next. Once we have the lighting inventory, the plan is to go to DOER and see if we can get a grant to actually do the lighting conversion over, which would actually, right now, based on the numbers that we have of the cost that it would take us to transition over to LEDs, we'd have a 2-year payback by the time. So we'd have to upfront, roughly around $60,000 at some point but if we could get the DOER grant, there would be no upfront cost other than the purchasing that National Grid.
Is this an item that we're planning on putting on the warrant?
We've already placed, we've already discussed that. That was actually in our capital, the $15,000 to have the consultant. So now is if what we could be doing from now up until town meeting, we could be doing the interviews. And then if town meeting votes to appropriate the funds, we would be prepared with a contractor to say, contingent on it passing town meeting, we're gonna contract with you to do this.
Be
I
ready to
mean,
move.
look at,
forward.
obviously, our committee knows a lot more about this than the select board. I think that the committee should act similar to the accountant search group, search team, where they do the interviews and make a recommendation to us. And, obviously we sign contracts, but I'm very comfortable with you and our committee, taking the lead on this. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, they've done an amazing
Yeah,
amount
no,
of
I know.
work and they've just put an enormous amount of time into this. And I went to the last meeting and I was very impressed. So yeah, I have no problem whatsoever with the committee actually making a recommendation to us. If you're comfortable moving forward with that, Laura?
Yes, I mean, I'm comfortable. Any of those options are fine with me. And the other thing is when we hold interviews, you're all welcome to participate, attend those as well. So those are open.
Exactly. Okay,
It just
so
me- it
we have to
just
make
we
a
don't have
motion to move this forward?
Yeah,
Okay, so I make a motion that we move forward with the Green Committees. I don't know, you're not calling yourself the Lighting Committee, you're still the Green Communities, right?
It's
The Green
the street lighting
Communities,
subcommittee, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, it's a subcommittee.
yeah.
we've held,
Moving forward on giving the select board a recommendation on the lighting inventory consultant position.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just as a little aside, can we figure out how to get that one pole? I think it's by the Episcopal Church that is the wrong color green, painted to match all the other poles. It's
I'd
just.
like to replace that pole. That's the ugliest pole.
It's just like, it's the little things that make the town look sloppy, and it drives me kind of bad.
Well, I don't see any reason why we can't. Quite frankly,
all right.
but the other part of this is we have Cobra lights. There's also going to be the option that if we're going to own those lights, then we can put up what lights we want in specific areas. So we can make it much more attractive.
Good.
So Patrick, Roxanne, I'm sorry, can I make a comment?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that light by St. Paul's is really ugly, and the rest of the lights that are dark green, that was an initiative by Mary Flynn. And she worked with National Grid. I mean, she pressured them, encouraged them to paint all those Cobra lights in the downtown area dark green, and that's why there are those dark green lights.
right. We have that one hideous pole. So
Yeah.
maybe we have to put pressure on them, Michael.
We might have to, because it's most likely it's owned by National Grid.
Yeah, well,
But can we get them to paint it green?
Yeah. Well, I'll get a.
They're gonna own the
request in-
poles, but maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna. put a
We're not.
request into National Grid.
It's really quite something when you look at the Cobra poles in like a town just north of us in the downtown area. And then you look at those dark green poles in Stockbridge, what a difference it makes to have them painted dark green. It's incredible.
I agree.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Well, no, thank you.
Thank you, Barb, for being here. Okay, next item.
I do have one question, one
Yeah.
last question. These lights are gonna be controller ready, correct?
Yes, they have to, LED have to include a controller.
That if we decide we want to, in January, we don't need lights over by Tanglewood, but we need them in August, or nights of concerts, we need them later, then we don't, we'll be able to eventually figure out how to put controllers into.
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they will,
They
they
might-
have to be controller ready.
Right,
Yep.
they have to be controller ready, that we might get some controls. That's really a design. That's part of the process to really looking at what the cost of the payback will be and what the needs are. But those are the conversations that we would have with the consultant once we know, once we're
The
going.
reason I
through
bring
that.
it up, Laura, is that in no business, you do a capital investment and expect a 2-year payback. If we can do a 5 or 10-year payback and yet have the ability to control when the lights are on, so that we need them when we need them on, they're on, but otherwise that darn Tanglewood light that is literally outside my bedroom window is not on 12 months a year, all night long, it would be really awesome because I know I'm not the only one with this problem in town. So,
Still going on, believe it or not.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
yeah.
All righty, moving on.
Thanks.
Discussion on tax increment financing and vacant storefront initiative. Basically, I asked to put this on the agenda because I think we need to start talking about this. And I'm concerned about our downtown commercial area. We have a lot of places that are for sale. And so I started looking for what incentives programs are out there that might be able to assist us in terms of revitalizing our commercial area and trying to save what we have and build upon that. So I talked to Donna Brewer, and but I'd been thinking about it, and I found this great quote by Percy Shelley: "Nothing wilts faster than laurels that have been rested upon." And I think we have to be very careful in this town because we have a changing environment right now in our downtown, and we have to, we cannot assume that everything is going to just be fine. I think we do have to show some concern about the commercial area. So there were a couple of things that came up. And there's TIF, tax increment financing agreements that you can enter into to provide tax incentives to retain or attract businesses. And there's also vacant storefront initiative.
Yeah.
And that is where the town, if we qualify, and obviously, once again, the devil is in the details. This is going to take some homework. We're going to have to get more detail and discuss this. But that is a program in which the town identifies an area, typically a commercial area, where you have vacant storefronts. And it's based on, Michael has some experience with this, but when you fill out the application, they're obviously looking at the percentage of storefronts that you have that are empty. And they have to have been empty for some time. And we do have a couple that have been vacant for quite some time, over a year. But again, it's related as a percentage. They want to know the percentage. And there's also an application, not just for municipalities, but also for businesses, which I want to look into. Because if you own a building and it's been vacant, it looks to me, I haven't had a lot of time to put into this, but it looks to me like also businesses can also apply for this status. So I think it's something I just wanted to kick off, share some information. I've given printouts to both Chuck and Patrick tonight. And for any of you who would like, I can send you some links to various mass sites that cover these programs, and you can do a little investigation. But our town council, they have actually entered into a number of TIF agreements. So they have a lot of other clients that they have done this for. And if you're not familiar with it, tax increment financing is basically when you enter into an agreement, and in essence, you're giving a tax break, and it's over a period of time, and it can be variable. But what that does is that can then put the buyer, the commercial buyer, in a position where what we would like to see is some actual maintenance on some of these properties. Perhaps.
That's my question. I mean, obviously, in most of our downtown, the retail establishment does not own the building. If you look at the Muse, you look at Seven Arts, you look at the country store.
Right.
I mean, you look at the Waldorf School, for example. None of those are.
Nonprofits don't qualify for this, by the way.
Well, I'm not saying, but the landlord is not a nonprofit. The landlord, if we're talking about tax incentives.
Right.
And I think it's very important that we ensure there's a pass through to where the need is, which is the business establishment, not just sort of like, basically raising residence taxes in effect by doing, giving a landlord some break if he's not passing along or doing the maintenance or doing whatever.
Even if it's going to the landlord, because we've done these in North Adams with different ones, as long as the reporting back and you have milestones where basically they're agreeing maybe to, so this could be the landlord agreeing to put $500,000, say, worth of repairs or
Okay, so that was my
vitalization.
question.
And then in order to get that, they could get, say, a 5 or 10-year TIF in order to help mitigate those costs of that initial investment that they're doing. So they're not getting it just for the sake of getting it. They're either guaranteeing employment numbers or investment numbers or a combination of the two in order for them to,
There's also that 30% rule that we're gonna, that,
then you get into, that was actually discussed, yes, that, right, you get into the, if they're.
explain that what that is to the folks on the.
If you put in X amount of investment into a building, then it kicks off ADA compliance. So it becomes upgrades instead of maintenance. And once you've tripped 30% of the value, then you get into a situation where now
How many years do you have to do the 30%?
typically within a 3-year period.
Basically, if you do more than 10% investment in your building a year, you have to take something like the Red Line Inn, for example, and turn it into ADA compliant. And it's at a giant expense.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Right. We don't really have a say in that.
No, I understand that.
Whole compliance issue. But it is something that could hold some people back from doing some things.
Other hand, exterior paint or roof doesn't fall into that category.
Right. There are some
Okay.
things that you can do that are considered, you have to be able to declare maintenance, not upgrades, and there are some things that you're allowed to do. So
We have made.
once again, the devil's in the detail. But you know, as Roxanne pointed out, is figuring out right now, not making any action tonight is just getting this on our plates to begin discussion of analyzing. And actually, same thing with, and I know you just heard about the senior deferment program. I had sent it to Patrick thinking that here's one because of what you've expressed, Patrick, that you'd like to do for seniors. So I sent that to him with an idea. And then Patrick, you actually stated it was start to take these ideas and say, okay, over the next 6 months, what are we going to focus on?
Right.
And then which of these programs are we really going to push to get here in Stockbridge? So, and I figure the next meeting will bring the senior deferral one forward to just begin the discussion of it and begin talking about these different programs that are available.
And I think this is great. I didn't even know that these programs existed and it's awesome. Thank you.
Well, the other piece of this, I mean, there's a bunch of, they can actually, businesses, once, if we can establish a district, that's vacant storefront district, businesses within that district can then apply for tax credits through the state, not with us. TIF is one thing, that applies to property tax. However, the storefront vacancy, I think, has some real possibility here because it can assist some of the businesses by, if
Right.
we can apply and we're eligible and we set up that district, then they will be able to apply for tax credits through the state. So there's a number of different benefits to the businesses, and I think it's going to help. It can potentially help revitalize downtown. And for those of you who want to go and look it up, Mass General Law is under Chapter 40, Section 59. And if you go out, I can send out links to all the various
You want to,
places I've gathered information.
yeah, I'll get the links from you and we could place them on the website.
Yeah.
So people can just click from the website and take them
Right.
directly to it.
There's a whole bunch of information out there. Unfortunately, I've been dealing with a backed up sewer for the last several days, so I haven't been able to spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to get the ball rolling. And then when Chuck is back, I think we should have this also on our next agenda. Bring him up to date, and by then we can have done a little bit more homework on it.
Good.
Can I
Any
speak?
comments? Yes.
What,
Barb.
what does this have to do in relation to the shuttered business grants that are involved with COVID? Right? Isn't there something about shuttered business grant that just came up within the
That I
last
don't know.
couple of months? Are you guys familiar with that at
I
all?
am not familiar with that. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
Michael?
I can look, I'll have to look.
I'm,
that one
I'm
up.
pretty sure there was a shuttered business grant revitalization of downtown type of thing that just came up related to COVID, and I'll look it up and look it up a little bit further. So, because I thought that's what you guys were talking about tonight.
No,
So
no, no.
I'll take a little bit
that's-
further look,
Well, we
and
can-
it does have to relate to COVID with shuttered businesses. I know there were shuttered restaurants grant that came up, but
No,
I'll
I-
take a little bit look further on that.
I think that's separate. This is under Massachusetts Economic Development Incentive Programs, EDIP.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
I'm sure that what you're talking about, we can research, but this is.
Yeah, I think
something
it's all,
else.
yeah, I think that it could go hand in hand. Yeah.
And Barbara, it sounds like we're gonna have more flexibility with the new round of COVID money than we had with the last one. And it's much more substantial, isn't it around 500,000?
Yeah.
So, we're gonna have basically, outside the normal budget, $500,000 coming from, the federal government. And it's not an unreasonable conversation to have about whether or not, we want to target some of that at chamber members, so.
Yes, I talked with Michael about it a couple of weeks ago. I talked with our board of directors about it, and I wanted to go forward with some suggestions that Michael made, maybe doing a campaign on economic development, whether it's living here, growing your business here, what we have to offer. The chamber's always advertised, visit Stockbridge, and we've done a lot of WAMC and NPR. So with monies that Michael has said that's available, we were thinking it's, advertising, you could, the money goes very quickly, but definitely doing some type of campaign.
One of the things you might do, Barbara, is encourage your members who claim that they're in Lenox, even though they're in Stockbridge. to
I
actually let
have.
People know they're in Stockbridge so that, they can take advantage of those monies we're spending.
I have. Have you seen that finally with the announcement with Tanglewood's schedule, they actually say it's between Stockbridge and Lenox for the
Oh.
first time ever?
They mentioned us.
No, it's everything
Yes,
around
they have.
it's like half of Stockbridge Bowl is in Lenox, because everything around it on the north side has a Lenox address or Lenox marketing.
Yep. Yes,
Well,
yes.
the other thing.
White Pines is literally adjacent to the Stockbridge Bowl and has a Lennox address.
Wheelie is too,
I know, I didn't want to call them out. I live in one of their gatehouses.
I think the other
Yes.
thing that we need to also think about, in light of getting this, COVID money, is the other thing is maybe longer range thinking in terms of being able to actually do a full economic development analysis of this town. And
Yes.
over time, with public input, with business input, we come up with a longer range plan for how we can revitalize, how we can retain businesses here, how we can ensure that our Main Street is well maintained, et cetera. So I think that's a really, a good thing to keep in mind, because I think we need to have some long range planning.
I
So
do
that's-
agree.
Oh, sorry.
We were going in the right direction when we had, and I forget now at this point what the committee was that Steve Schatz started, and we started down that line, and then every time we change over, it gets dropped. But it really needs to continue, and I know that the strategic plan is involved in it, and it just, everybody needs to get involved and just continue forward instead of just, have one agenda and the next agenda. So I think that we need to look at the whole picture and just continue forward on it. I do agree, Roxanne. Thank
Yeah,
you.
like I was thinking, it's like we can't rest on our laurels. The world is
Yes.
changing. We have certainly a different downtown right now.
Yes.
And we do have to really pay attention to that.
No, but we also have to recognize that, there's 19,500 towns in America. There's 5,000 people or smaller. And only one of them gets these Best Town in America awards that we get all the time. There's Stockbridge exceptionalism. It's a thing. And we need to also be careful that, that whatever the secret sauce is, and I can't define what that is, but there is some secret sauce that has created a tremendous quality of life, tremendous wealth for homeowners here. Literally 3 times over the national average over the last 60 years. I think what we want to do is also be a little bit cautious that, we add to that, but we don't feel like, we have problems that we have to fix, because this is a pretty great town. already.
So
Well, this is
can
a great town. I think it's because we're so darn nice here. Come on.
It is. That has gotta be
We're
it.
all just nice people.
Roxanne, can I say something? Can I ask you something?
Yes,
It's
go ahead,
Kate.
Kate.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, well, I agree with you, Patrick, and I think part of the secret sauce is that we don't have sprawl. But
We don't,
We don't have what, Kate?
sprawl,
Oh, yeah.
not
yeah.
our committee.
But my question is, in terms of the work on Main Street, will there be at the crosswalks, will there be, those gentle speed bumps like they have in Lenox that sort of slow people down? Because I actually think that plays a role in how people, experience the town. If they're driving more slowly through the town, they're more apt to see what is actually there. So I'm
Yes.
wondering, is it in the works to have those crosswalks on the main street?
Isn't the ADA stuff in the,
Well, that's not ADA. But yes, Kate, the answer is yes. As it turns out, there is one that is going to be incorporated, and it's the one that will actually be moved slightly, but we will be having a presentation, obviously, number one, to the Finance Committee and also to the town to present this whole project. But the answer is yes.
there's a-
That
like
There
there's
will
a-
be one, and it's going to be the one that's going to be down by the library.
Can you do more of them as raised bumps? I
Well,
mean,
it becomes problematic because you do have to worry with multiples about drainage.
what
So if
about
we're
having
willing
one?
to possibly to put more money into drainage, they could probably incorporate another one. I had kind of wanted to see two of them
what is the drainage issue?
because you end up with pooling between them. Okay,
These are raised crosswalks
slightly.
that slow the traffic, but they
So you could
can end up with.
pond and you
Great in the
have to
winter.
have-
Yeah.
But you have to have drainage. But anyway, that's the answer to your question, Kate.
Could you do two, maybe one up by the town, as people are approaching town, sort of maybe just northeast of the town hall, so that, before they hit really the center of town, they've
That one they
already.
had ruled out because of the drain, because the water would come down, back up against it, create ice there.
That was problematic from an engineering point of view. Yeah, we had to worry about pooling there.
Okay.
I think we should do an underpass.
Okay, any other comments about TIF or vacant storefront initiative? Any other questions on that topic?
No, but I do want to comment that we are voted on USA Travel awarded or not awarded, nominated for the best small town arts community. And if you go on our Facebook page, vote for us. We're also awarded the best of travel awards from Travel Awaits, that if you guys see us, vote for us.
Okay,
That vote that came up within the last month.
wow.
I am good. Anything else?
No, so moving on. Last item on the agenda is
All right.
discussion on the Agriculture and Forestry
Yes.
Commission.
I think it's Article 25 of the bylaws allows us to have one. And we haven't had one in a while. And I think Chuck jogged the town's memory about how it's important with, advocating for the right to farm bylaw. And certainly when we look at things like Ice Glen and some of the decisions we're going to need to make around forest management plans and around how we prioritize resources to save what we can save, where we're not gonna be able to save everything, that having, I certainly can understand from the work I've been doing, the importance from the forestry side, but I think that the agricultural side is equally important in terms of sustainable farming, micro farming, all those sort of trends that we have that we can, locally produce food is always gonna be better. So, we've got 3 full commissioners we can appoint and 2 alternates. And, Matt Boudreau, Pam's son, has indicated an interest in serving. And he works at Woven Farms and was on the MVP call and was articulating some really strong thoughts on farming, going forward. And I think there's other folks like that in town who might see an interest in these issues.
Okay.
So,
basically just making an announcement that if anyone is interested in serving on an agriculture and forestry commission, they should contact the selectmen and or Michael Canales, our town administrator. I'd be happy to hear from you. Any questions at this point or comments from the public? No? Okay, hearing none.
Hi Roxanne. Hugh here.
Oh, hi, Hugh.
Just one thing on the bears, feeding the bears. I know the abstracts could shed some light on that, the wording on that. I know maybe bears and predatory animals, or any animal with an underlying hunting season might be some way to go, because I know that songbirds are protected in the abstracts in the Commonwealth. So that might, be something to look at, and the wording might help it, I guess, maybe take a
Okay.
look at the abstracts,
Okay, thank you, Hugh.
Yep.
I have one other thing. David Resnick, who owns a house on Sergeant Street, is turning 100 next week. And his family has asked us to proclaim April 17th as sort of David Resnick Day or something like that. And I don't know if we do things like that, but if we do, maybe it could get on next week's agenda. I think every resident of this town who turns 100 can have their own day. I fully support that, but it's up to the board, I suppose.
Well, why don't we put it on next week?
Okay, I'll forward what his daughter sent to the entire board.
But his birthday is when? 17th?
April 17th.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
We have a whole week to figure it
we
out.
can wish him a happy
I think
100th
we,
birthday. It's like, yay.
We can do a ticker tape parade, except we can't. So,
Okay, anything else? Okay, hearing none, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned at 7:42.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.